What's up, money lovers? Welcome back here again today with Tim from Oracle Investments. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. What's going on, Ben?
So, what do we got this week? What's new in the markets?
So what's new in the markets is, oh, hey, Russia's coming into Ukraine. Imagine that. Yeah, it's been an ugly week, but actually, I think the week overall, I didn't even look. I think it's basically flat on the week. So it
Yeah,
wasn't horrible. I mean, we obviously the situation sucks, but we're getting some silver linings out of it and some positivity. So hopefully that can carry us through, and hopefully this thing ends soon.
yeah, definitely. It definitely feels like every day is brutal, but yeah, I'm sure if I'll pull up the S&P, I'm sure for the week was probably flat. But yeah, hopefully we can get some silver linings here, like a faster move to sustainability and energy sovereignty among states. Yeah, over the last 5 days, S&P 500 is up 0.02%. So just a flat week, which it's crazy. It feels like it's a bloody red every day.
Oh, I know, but
Obviously,
and you know, and that's something my subscribers understand. That's what we've been talking about a lot on my channel is the roller coaster ride we're going to be on. I think at the end of the year we're going to be net positive, but to get there is going to be one hell of a ride.
yeah, definitely. And Tesla for the week was up just under 3%. I mean, to me, you asked me, I would, without looking, I would assume it was down like 10%.
Oh my gosh, I know.
But yeah,
Well,
it's
and you got to remember, I mean, it was last Thursday, a week ago from this past Thursday that we hit the rock bottom. I mean, we pre-market we're under $700 for Tesla.
yeah,
So
that was
we
pretty
we definitely
crazy.
came up a bit since then. Whether
It's
whether we're going to come back down to that or not, I don't know. Gosh, man, there's just so much uncertainty. Like every time we think we've got some clarity as to what's going on in the near term, it's like something changes, something comes up. You know,
100%.
we're
Yeah.
I mean, we were all thinking, mid March we're going to get the interest rates going up, and the week leading up to it, we're going to see the market pulling back a little bit, and then we get Russia invading Ukraine, and now they're like, well, we've already pulled back, so are we going to pull back in March or not? And just so much up in the air.
Yeah, and the whole thing with Ukraine, it's interesting. I saw a lot of people sharing the like invasion index. If you look at, the last 5 times that a country's been invaded, the market has tended to bottom, the day of the invasion or around that time, which is, surprising probably, but it's just because the market likes the certainty. Here's my dog in the corner. The market appreciates just you know knowing what's happening versus being left in up in the air. But yeah, so it's very interesting, like, was that the bottom? Or I think the only way that it gets worse is obviously if this conflict continues to escalate, which it seems like it's not cooling down anytime soon. But as far as other things that are going to move the markets, I feel like the Fed has probably relaxed the rate hikes a little bit. What did they say? They're doing 0.5 or much more gradual,
Yeah.
right?
So before the invasion, it sounded like they were going to potentially be doing two rate hikes in March. Now Powell, and that's why the market crashed again. I think it was Thursday this week again. Had mentioned how we might only be able to do one rate hike because it seems like it's a tough spot because now it seems like with the invasion that might cause inflation to actually be worse, but then they may not do as many rate hikes because they don't want to throw too many things out of whack. So it just more uncertainty thrown out there. But it does sound like they're going to be doing probably just one rate hike in March right now.
Yeah, and hopefully we get this inflation under control. I'm gonna be doing a lot of driving tomorrow. Not looking forward to paying $5 or $6 a gallon. But
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, what are they like down for you? I drove by gas stations today, but didn't even look. I've got to get gas tomorrow myself.
yeah, we're in South Carolina right now, and I think it's around 350 a gallon. But we're gonna be making our way up north, and I'm sure it's just gonna each state will be another 20 cents higher.
But
It's
I
funny
know because I
every
was going to say, I know down south and even Jersey, they're relatively inexpensive for gas compared to to the rest of the country. Because here in Connecticut, I know I haven't looked, but I know before the prices all went up, I was paying like 370 a gallon. So I'm sure they're over $4 now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Every time I have to do a lot of driving, the gas hits all-time high, like without fail. This happened like last summer too. It's just awful. But
Oh yeah, I'm just glad I got my Model Y coming in.
yeah, so yeah, we want to talk silver linings. I could see a lot of people getting fed up very quickly when gas in Cali, I think, is over $6. I mean, if it
Oh
keeps
yeah.
rising, the faster people are going to want to get off it and get into any electric vehicle. Do you know when you're supposed to get the Model Y?
So mine right now is slated for November. And I'm just waiting till we get clarification from cars coming out of Austin because obviously I'm kind of glad I everything is timed out the way it is because I want the 4680 structural pack. That to me is I must have for me. So once they give clarity and answer questions as to which models are coming out with it first, then I may adjust it because if they are definitely coming out, because I've got the Model Y long range, basically bare bones package, which is why it's November. But if they say that they're going to be doing long range with the 4680s, I may throw on induction wheels because if I put induction wheels on it, I'll get it in August.
Okay.
Um, so I'm just waiting to find out about that because I know they're doing performance first. They've got to go with the higher end vehicles first to keep the margins higher, especially as they do the beginning ramps. So
Hmm.
I'm waiting on that. Once I get the clarification, so it's either going to be August or November. So
Are you getting the FSD package?
Originally I wasn't. One of my good friends has a Model Y. He had FSD. He's one of the beta testers. So he showed me what's going on with it, and he said, unless you're really into helping do this, there's really no benefit really for having FSD. But then when I was talking to somebody else in my comments one day, right before they went up with the price from 10,000 to 12,000, I was thinking about the future and when Elon's talking about, FSD and robo taxis and the revenue they're going to generate, and then thinking about when we get to that point, the price of FSD might skyrocket. So I'm like, if I'm going to have my car for minimum 10 years, paying 12 grand for it right now really is a no brainer, especially knowing that I'm going to be utilizing it as a robo taxi in the future. The $12,000 will come back to me without a problem. Because my
Yeah,
initial
that's
plan was have my Model Y until I get my Cybertruck and then trade in the Model Y and get the Cybertruck. But if I can have my Model Y just be driving around and helping people commute and get paid for it, I'm not trading it in.
yeah, no, definitely, and that's definitely something to think about because yeah, you could look at it as an investment. I mean, either way, the car itself we know keeps the value, but yeah, that FSD package, 10 grand up front. If when it does come to fruition, it probably definitely will be well worth it. Regardless to just have it drive yourself, or if you want to use it to make some extra money. But in the meantime, yeah, you're making this big upfront payment. But who knows? By the time it is mainstream, they could very well hike that price up because people will probably be willing to pay whatever the price is to have that experience and make some money off of it potentially.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and thinking about it, and obviously there's so many different routes that we can go with this. And I know we talked about it before, having a car come out and be like, hey, you're basically going to be paying the FSD subscription to get a car for free. So who knows what that price is going to be? And then, looking at, they're probably going to be going away from the lump sum payment for the FSD at some point. I'm going to guess by the end of this year, once they solve level 4, the lump sum is going to be gone because now we got to a point where we're going to be getting to alpha. And when you get to an alpha product, this is something that is legitimately going to be saving people time and give them productivity time back. So people are going to do that. And then when other companies, and I'm going to be doing it for my business as well, is buying a whole bunch of Teslas to be able to use them as a robotaxi fleet. Then you're getting into monthly subscriptions. And I can see those monthly subscriptions being quite pricey. I mean, right now it's $200 a month. I can easily see it going to 500, if not more.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point too. And just for it's funny for the non-believers in FSD. Well, where's the value going to come from for Tesla? It's funny in my here's my last video or the last couple. I was just light bulb kind of went off. I was doing some quick math, and I'm thinking to myself, so Tesla just sold just under a million cars in 2021, 940K around there, I think, and the profit margins around 30%. So it came out to something like their automotive revenue maybe just under 50 billion, and then like 13 billion of that was gross profit. So if we project out Tesla's mission statement for 2030, they want to sell 20 million cars a year by 2030. We know that they tend to be ambitious, so I was even just like being conservative. Let's say in 2030 they sell 10 million cars at the current price point. If nothing changes, nothing else changes, let's say the average sale price I think is around $50,000. I mean, it's probably a lot higher when you add in all the the special bells and whistles. But 50,000 a car, and if they could sell 10 million in 2030, half their goal, which I think they can easily get there. They with the 4 factories they already have, and maybe one or two at more, accompanied with ramping up production at the current ones. So we're talking 10 million cars, 50K each. That's $500 billion of revenue. And if they bring in a 30% profit margin on that, we're talking $150 billion. Like, this is more money than Apple is bringing in right now. It
Oh
just
yeah.
blew my mind.
Yeah, actually, I just finished watching that video of yours, and I was thinking the same thing. And one thing that I had, the only pushback I had was I think the average cost of the car is going to be a lot less. And here's the reasoning why. Now, they're going to end up separating out FSD and insurance and everything else. So when you come down to just the car itself, at that point, they're going to have a compact car, and that's going to end up being the most expensive vehicle. And I know Stephen Mark Ryan talks about, probably an $18,000 vehicle coming out in the late 2020s. But then when you throw in their FSD, is that really going to be what's going to come out? But maybe they will have that $18,000 vehicle that is just a strict robo taxi. So
Yeah,
average vehicle cost would probably be a lot less than $50,000. But like you said, you went super conservative with the amount of vehicles sold. So yeah, I mean, half a trillion, I have no doubt is going to be the revenue they're bringing in minimum at the time we hit 2030.
yeah,
It's there's so many other things you got going on, and I know you mentioned the video as well between energy and FSD, and seeing now with what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, it's really popping a lot of light bulbs off in people's heads going, we are way too oil dependent. I mean,
hmm
oil's never going to go away. We still need oil for a lot of other things that are going on in this world. But when it comes to travel and commute, we can totally go electric. There's so many things we can use electricity for. And Tesla's going to take a huge portion of that.
definitely. And it's interesting. I think Chamath Palihapitiya was saying this on the All In podcast from a few weeks ago. How if you take this, $3 trillion Build Back Better plan that Biden was trying to pass, probably less than that is all it would cost to just deploy solar throughout all of America, or even better, Elon has said a area smaller than Rhode Island. I think you need about 100 square miles could produce enough power of solar panels, enough power to give energy to the entire United States, be fully energy independent, no more oil. Why we wouldn't just do something like that, especially after what we're seeing unfold right now and getting off of Russian oil? Seems like a no-brainer. Probably makes too much sense, and it's not going to happen, obviously. But
Oh,
it,
I
it
know.
it would be so easy to. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's so many contradictory things that are going on. I mean, and as we discussed last time, at least the only positives that I can really see consistently going on right now are the futures moving to EVs and the futures moving to clean energy. So we're moving in that direction. Why we're not pulling the trigger on a lot of things now, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, even Elon tweeted about how it's impossible to switch over to renewable energy right now. We do not have the infrastructure for it. So we've got to use oil. We've got to release some oil somewhere to do this. And I had thought about um, the pipeline, the Keystone pipeline.
hmm hmm
But as Jen Psaki had mentioned, and I did confirm it, it's not just a matter of flipping a switch, pulling people back to work, and opening it back up. It hasn't even fully been completed yet, so it's going to take a few years for that to come online. So there's no way. So it doesn't even make sense to do it. And I hear both sides of the story on this. But if it's something that could have helped us immediately, go for it. But if it's going to take a few years, then don't bother. There's other solutions that we can go to.
Yeah, I mean, that's true too. But I also almost see it as I look at the Keystone pipeline, and you've got the Nord Stream 2 or whatever in Europe, which that was a mistake. But like we're seeing with like Germany, it just really seems like they canceled it, but didn't have anything. Like, we're just gonna put all our dependence on Russia. It just didn't have a good plan. And even if it does take a few years, like, the reality, unfortunately, I think is oil is going to be a big part of, even beyond cars, is how many things oil is used for energy, probably for the next at least 10 years, until it's like really phased out to like a significant amount. And I feel like, so even if it takes a few years to get these things online, just to like give us something so that we are energy independent while working on making the future solar panel, like having like a backup plan, I feel like could be better than the alternative. Because what's the alternative? We're dependent on the Middle East and Russia. But
Yeah.
I mean, we might as well use our own oil. Someone's going to be burning
True.
it.
And
Yeah.
and we produce a lot of our own. So I don't know. It drives me crazy there because we export so much and then import so much. I'm like, just use our own. I don't. I know there's so much other BS that goes on into it, but you make a good point though. I think EVs, this whole push right here is going to push us to EV adoption a lot faster than most people think, and energy will lag behind that for sure. It's way too hard to flip over the infrastructure versus just flipping over vehicles from ICE to electric. So we'll be in a place where probably by mid 2030s, I would say I would say by 2035 we're going to be at the point then where we are with smartphones right now. Whereas 95% of the population is using a cell phone of some sort, and most of them are smartphones. I mean, at my job, I got contractors coming in still with their flip phones, and they don't even know how to use them. So
Yeah.
I know
Going
full
to
well
be going to be replaced by AI soon.
Oh, exactly. I mean, we're going to be going to a place where that's where we're going to be with EVs. There's still going to be ICE vehicles out there. It's going to happen. We still have the Amish, whatever, but that's where we're going to be at, I believe, in the reality in 2035. And then at that point, we're going to be switching over the energy as well. Energy may take probably till 2050, but oil is never going to go away. Oil is used for so many other things anyway, but the dependence on it will be very minimal in the next 15 years.
Definitely, yeah, I could see that. Um, so what else? I know we had some fintech stuff we wanted to get to. What fintech
Yeah.
companies are you looking at?
So fintech for me, and it's so strange because banks, dominate everything. Banks just rule all, and I'm like, so getting into fintech, is that going to be the future, or are these fintech companies going to be competing, or just maybe get bought out? And so the two that I play in right now are Square and SoFi. Those are my two. And SoFi I really like because they are now chartered, and so they're basically like a real bank and fintech at the same time. So that's
Yeah,
that's my big long term play. Square, I like them. I like Jack Dorsey, but I don't know how that's going to play out. Just like PayPal, I have a feeling that the products that they offer could either be offered by other bigger companies or just get swallowed up by something else. So I still like them. I want to watch them and see how they do. But SoFi is the one I think will do the best out of them all going forward, just because they already have the charter.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, the only issue I see with fintech as a whole is it just seems like a very crowded space. SoFi, I definitely am following much closer now than Square. Like I used to be a big fan of Square, but I feel like they were kind of a pioneer. But now they're just in this playing field that's just so crowded. They're competing with Stripe and so many other people doing the similar things. Because I feel like they were great, did a lot for small business in the beginning. They're competing with that, and they're also kind of competing with the SoFi's and the legacy banks in some ways. And then same thing with SoFi. They're definitely competing, obviously, with the legacy banks and things like Lending Club. There's like a bunch of different
Oh yeah.
fintech startups, but I do think I thought SoFi's report was really strong. It definitely increased my confidence in them, and I think that they're onto something with this all in one place. I think just moving forward for everything, especially when I think for like the younger generations and millennials and stuff, having everything, your student loans, your mortgage, your insurance, your brokerage, stocks, crypto, like doing all that under one umbrella is a lot easier because I just think about personally, I have a different app bank account for like all these different things.
Oh
And
my
it's
God.
like,
Yeah.
what's my password? Like I gotta look and figure this out. Like
Oh, it drives me nuts.
and the fact that SoFi in addition is so consumer friendly, they're not looking like legacy banks. It's so funny. All the legacy companies are just focused on the short term profits. The legacy banks make money with the overdraft fees and stuff like that. And SoFi says, straight up, we are not going to be like this. We don't charge overdraft fees, which is really just like, I think it's just scummy tactics that short term will make you some money. Long term, your customers hate you. And so SoFi is right about that. And so they're not doing that. And what they're doing instead, they have these programs, they have this cashback card that when you make good financial decisions or you attend like whatever financial seminars, they'll give you extra cash back. Every little bit is better than you paying fees, I think. So I think
Oh
they have a
yeah.
lot of good stuff going. Galileo is really interesting. That Technisys acquisition too.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I sometimes I look at like those overdraft fees, and I'm pulling myself out of debt over the last 10 years. At one time I went out to Staples and I got myself a calendar. And I was like, oh, let me grab a pack of gum too. And I made two transactions. Didn't realize I was overdrawing and got whacked for $30 with each one. And I'm like, and the only people who get hit by it are the people who can't even afford it. So it
Hmm.
drives me crazy that that's what's going on. And every time I see that with any companies who have little silly fees like that, something in the back of my mind tells me that the company had to do that because they do not have enough revenue coming in otherwise. So they have to get
Right.
creative with different ways of throwing fees out there. And
Yeah.
so it's nice and refreshing to see SoFi. And when you talk about, the younger generations, my kid is 15 years old. So I kind of like pay attention to what is he getting into because I know, knowing our generation as we came up, we're now using the things that we saw as we grew up, smartphones and computers. So I'm like, well, what are the things that he's really getting into now at his age that are going to become the norm in the future? Because with the boomer generation and then Generation X, which is my generation afterwards, a lot of us, the boomers are on the point where they're dying off, and the stuff that they were too stubborn to take on because they're at the point in their lives where they didn't want to learn anything new. Totally get it. And so, they're moving on. So what generations are coming up and what's the stuff that they're using? So we've got millennials now starting to take over and start to run the country. All right, well, what are they using? And then my son's generation, what are they using? And my son's generation, they're going to be all Tesla, everything electric vehicles, all that stuff is going to be the norm for them. And so if you can see that and you can see that with fintech and be like, it's just going to be so much easier for them to do stuff online. They do everything online. So just take a look at what the younger generations are using and invest in that stuff. It's really a no-brainer for the future.
That's a great point, and it's super true because you know this is the problem with, not to write off entire investing styles, but if you're a value investor and you strictly are looking at value, you're not going to catch that. You're not going to catch the trends. And there's a reason why some companies trade at such a deep value, because they're a value trap and they are the past and they're getting left in the past. So yeah, you definitely have to keep an open mind. And I bet, that's really interesting you say that. It'd be funny if someone made like a arc thematic type investment portfolio based on is the biggest products in like a younger generation. What are people age 10 to 20? What companies are they most spending most of their money on? I bet you'd outperform the S&P.
You know what? That's actually a great idea. You could do like a Gen X ETF, a Millennial ETF, a Gen Z ETF. That would be
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
that's
I
that.
actually wonder how those would perform compared to everything else.
That would be very interesting, especially if if you have a 5-10 year time horizon. I think you'd have really good success with that. And it makes me think too. Back a few years, I think it was 2017, the whole Pokemon Go thing came out,
Oh yes.
and I remember seeing this, and this is before I really knew what I was doing with like the stock market. But I just was thinking to myself, I'm like, the first day it came out, I see everyone doing this. They're walking around in traffic trying to catch Pokemon, and I'm like, hold on, like this is good for Nintendo stock. So I remember it was a Friday. I wanted to buy some Nintendo stock, and like the market had just closed. Sure enough, by that Monday, I think the stock had doubled. It went from $17 to 34 or something. And I think I did get in then, and maybe I made another 20 or 30%. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like there's the trend. Buy Nintendo.
Yeah.
Everyone's playing with a Nintendo Switch. Stuff like that. It's very interesting, and the Teslas too. It's a big one moving
Oh
forward.
yeah, and my son, I remember that summer because my son and I were all over that. We played Pokemon Go all the time, and I think
Oh
it was
yeah,
the
it was
last
awesome.
time I think that was the last time the world truly knew peace because everybody didn't care who you were. Everybody got along.
It's so funny you say. I was just thinking the same exact thing. Like you just walk around, like you're in the park with all these strangers. You're talking to everyone. Everyone was like on the same wavelength of just like, oh man, like we're
Oh yeah.
catching Pokemon. It was nuts, but yeah, it was like beautiful compared to we need something like that now. I think.
Oh no kidding. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you're so right. So now talking about fintech, and I think about like banks. So think about you go to Bank of America, and you can't go into a Bank of America and be like, oh, I'd like to buy some Bitcoin. Like you can't. It doesn't exist. So, and I'm sure that these banks are going to be switching over. We're going to get there. But crypto is another one of those things that I'm looking into the future as this is the place that we're headed. And people are like, oh, it's never going to work. It's going to fail. It's just a bubble. But you look at how many companies are investing resources, time, money, effort, all into this kind of stuff. It's going to happen. So we're all heading in that direction. And the three major places I see we're headed are going to be in cryptocurrency, the metaverse, and EVs and renewable energy. So if you're not invested to those three things with a long-term outlook, then I think your portfolio is going to underperform what everybody else's is.
Definitely. And yeah, it's funny, like, JP Morgan, arguably the best bank, but Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin's a scam, they'll never touch it. Like they're stuck in their ways, and eventually they're gonna have to switch sides or they're gonna die out, I think. Yeah, so it will be interesting to see. Like legacy banks, I think they're a few years ahead of the curve compared to like legacy auto, but their day of reckoning is coming. And 10 years from now, if they don't, get with the times and start innovating, they'll probably be dying too. And the other big thing with legacy banks is how many brick and mortar spots do they own? Whereas SoFi doesn't need any physical locations. Everything's moving
Right.
to online.
They just
Um,
need a football stadium.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just the $700 million for that, and then but they're still way ahead of the game. Not owning physical branches saves them a
Oh
ton of
yeah.
money, and it's like there's just no point if it can all be online.
Yeah,
Way
I mean,
less
and
overhead.
for me, I hadn't stepped foot in a bank for the longest time. And I can't remember even why I did, but it's like very rare that I have to. Maybe like I need quarters or something for laundry. That's really it. Other than that, everything can be done online. And like I said, it's saving all that money from personnel and from brick and mortar and having to pay leases or owning buildings and property or whatever. That's a significant difference. And now I think it's going to be easier for legacy banks to make the change than it would be for legacy auto, because for them it's mostly more software based. Create the software that you need for updating, that's fine. Whereas legacy auto obviously has to completely build new factories, revamp their entire portfolio and how they run their business, versus legacy banks, which are still can keep their core business. They don't need to lose their core business. They can hold on to that. So I think it'll be an
Definitely.
easier transition. But that's where I look at a lot of the fintechs where I think the startups are going to be one of those. Are they going to get bought out or are they going to burn out? And I think the legacy banks are going to be the ones that survive because they have the money, and the startups will be either get swallowed up or go out themselves. So I think that's what's going to end up happening in the long term. But as you made a point, are they going to die out like a JP Morgan? You got to remember a lot of these CEOs, they're older, they're the older generation, and so they just, they're smart guys. Obviously, they're in positions that they're in for a reason, but a lot of them just do not see where the future is going. So they're so disconnected, and they're still like, and maybe it's a corruption thing on their end, and they refuse to change because it's just going to be too much for them, and they don't think they can. I don't know, as the generations move on and as the younger generations start taking over these companies, that's going to be the norm for them. I look at, my son, he's doing everything online. If he becomes the CEO of JP Morgan someday in the future, they're going to be doing that anyway because that's what he knows.
Definitely. No, great point. And it's just fascinating with crypto. I mean, a lot of this can probably be chalked up to the trend just always repeats. It's like the older generation, when the internet started, they were like, this will never be anything. This is ridiculous. Like, and with that being said, I feel like crypto is like the perfect example. Crypto and metaverse. Well, let's start with crypto. Like the next step where a lot of people are writing it off. And just like the internet craze, I do think a lot of the current cryptos will fail. You could say it's in a bubble, but a few will survive and like become, the Amazon and the Apple of the next 10, 20 years or whatever. So what cryptos are you most bullish on? Do you own any?
That's funny. That was a question I was going to ask you. Yeah. So,
Beat you
I'm,
to it.
looking long term, I go with the top 10 always. The ones I'm currently invested in: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, Cardano, and then I've got some Sheeb, just because I'm looking at Sheeb, even if it does not become, an actual used coin. I think it will be. I think once they cut a bunch of the things down and pull some off of the blockchain, they'll end up being able to get the value up higher. But I have a feeling that a lot of these coins, especially the initial ones that came out, go 10, 15 years down the road. If nothing else, they'll be like a legacy, reminiscing, people reminiscing like Pokemon, and be like, oh, that was awesome, remember that, and this and that. And then we'll have like a spike volume and people will be like, oh, I want Sheep now. And So maybe my 2 million sheep will go up to $1, and I can sell them for a couple million bucks.
That would be nice. Yeah. No, it's definitely true. I would agree, for the most part. Like I own a lot of the ones you said, um, and I have like a bunch of the way I look at like the Doge, and I mean Doge. A lot of people, Elon could argue that it is legit, but a lot of the other ones I own, just a little bit of like Stormex, Digibyte, a couple other ones like that. I just look at them as like lottery tickets. Like I maybe put like a few $100 into them, but the ones that I'm biggest on definitely Bitcoin because like you said, they were the first one, and I feel like it's my limited crypto knowledge. I think they're the one that's most truly decentralized. Like the government couldn't shut it down. They don't know who started it, and the fact that it is a finite supply. We know how much is coming out, and what is it by 2140 or something? It'll be no more supply. So the way I see it with that is the value, unless it is totally abandoned, which I don't see, it can only go up, right? And so I like the whole idea of Bitcoin, it being a store of value, it being digital gold. I think a lot of these other projects have, great ideas too, but that's just the one that I can really see withstanding the test of time, at least currently. Who knows what ends up happening. But so Bitcoin's the one I'm probably biggest into. And I also like, I use Voyager Digital for most of my crypto. I like that I can earn interest. I'm earning, 4.5% on my Bitcoin. So it's a double win there, if it
Oh
if
yeah.
it truly does become a store of value. And then I also have US dollar coin, started putting a good amount into just to kind of, instead of leaving all my money in the savings account where it's earning 0.001, I'm getting 9.5% interest on that in Voyager. And I've got some Ethereum, some Cardano as well. But I think moving forward, I'm probably going to be sticking the majority to, Bitcoin, US dollar coin, and maybe some Ethereum as well. At least with like the majority of my new capital that I put in, just because I do see them as the strongest right now. And like I'm not trying to get 100x if I can just they stick around for 10 years and I
Oh
get
yeah.
interest and they keep going up. I mean, what else? What more can I ask for?
Oh yeah, that's my long term stuff. And for me, like I look at more and more places are actually taking it as payment. And we know that Bitcoin right now is not really as functional as payment as many of the other coins out there. Like Ethereum and Doge are significantly better options for coins for payment. But as a store of value for Bitcoin, I think it's great. And I actually do the same thing as you do, but I use BlockFi instead of Voyager Digital. And I do it for the same exact reason. I've got it in there, and I think for me, I got to double check the rates just changed. I think it's like 7% back on my Bitcoin. And what I end up doing is I actually get my interest back in Ethereum. So the interest I get paid from Bitcoin, I actually get in Ethereum. Now, going back to legacy banks, you tell me a legacy bank that's going to be like, hey, you know what? The interest I make on my US dollars, I want you to pay me in yen instead. No, it ain't going to happen. So it's just so much more versatile when you go to cryptocurrency. But again, similar to like NFTs, I don't even know where to start with most of them. Anything other than like the top 5 and 10, I got no idea. Everything is literally like a lottery ticket, like you said. And so for me,
Yeah.
she was basically like a lottery ticket, hoping
Yeah.
maybe a spike pop and I take it out. And I actually right now I'm dollar cost averaging. I'm so all over the place, but I use Robinhood for Doge, and I just put $1 in every day, $1 a Doge a day. And Elon's using it, everybody else is using it. It's becoming like a legitimately used coin. So
Yeah.
I might do it. And again, if nothing else in the future, if it's not used regularly, it could be, a nostalgic coin that people are going to want to collect later on. So worst
Right.
case
Right.
scenario is I'll hold on to it like my old baseball cards, and I'll keep it from there. It'll be like its own NFT.
Yep, the cards came back in a big way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, I think I actually got a few million of Shiba for free. Voyager had like a promotion a while back that like every
Nice.
person you referred. So yeah, I think I'm sitting on around 3 million Shiba Inu as well. And yeah, that's the other way I see these things is that's perfect. You don't need to go all in. Like $1 a day at the end of the year, that's $365. You'll have thousands of Dogecoin, and that's the other thing I've just come to realize with these things is if they really do take off, I don't need to put that much money in to, make a huge return. Like if even if Dogecoin one day went to $1, I mean, think about how much your position would be worth then. Like, you can go pretty far with a limited amount of risk. That's the way I kind of see and play all these like altcoins. The other one actually I forgot that I own too is VGX, the Voyager token.
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course,
And
that one has tanked
yeah,
hard over the last
so
6 months.
I like I cost average in, but I am bag holding a bit on it. I think my cost base is probably somewhere $3.30 maybe, and now it's like under $2. But what I like about that one, and why I was so eager to build it up to I think I got 500 of them. It earns 7% interest, but even bigger. This is a really interesting use case I've found. Is to get you on the Voyager platform, if you own 500 Voyager tokens, they'll give you an additional 0.5% interest boost on all the other cryptos that you're earning interest on. And they have different tiers. So, like if I did go to the highest tier and bought a ton more VGX, I could own an additional 1.5% interest on everything else. So, I thought that was a really smart way for them to
Oh,
draw people to
yeah.
their platform. It's like an innovative crypto idea. And yeah, so for me, it's like it's worth it to get that. Now I'm getting an extra 0.5% of interest on Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything. So yeah, that's another one I think is more speculative, but I'm really just in it for that interest boost.
Oh, yeah, and I know Jeremy is big into that one too. Now, do you have, Voyager stock as well?
I do. I'm sitting. My cost basis is like just under $10. I think $9.40, which I thought by now would be like double where it is. What the problem is it's a over the OTC stock now. They need to
Is it
get
still
the
OTC? I thought it was NASDAQ, no?
now the Nasdaq listing should be coming soon, or
Okay.
I don't know what happened. They got the Toronto uplisting, I
Yep, I
thought,
knew that.
but because now I can't buy it without paying a $50 foreign transaction fee, which is really annoying. Maybe
Yeah.
so that's really deterred me from buying more. And like just 2022, just seeing how the year started, I was like, all right, I need to cool it with these more speculative investments. I want to get my money into VYM and something more stable
Oh,
to
yeah.
kind of prop me up, because I just feel like this is not the time to be buying speculative companies that aren't making a profit. But yeah, I do have like a good amount of maybe I don't know. I'd have to check, but yeah, it's one of my smaller positions, Voyager, and definitely a speculative one. I think in that space, that's a whole other interesting way to play the crypto market. Is
Oh, yeah.
you're going to need to buy it somewhere. So Coinbase probably the favorite today. I mean, what do you think on the crypto brokerages side?
So those are good. So Coinbase, it was funny because what all the hype with the IPO. I went out there and I was like, I bought a little bit of it and then it dipped, so I dollar cost average down, and then it came back up. I got profits on it. I sold out, and I think I sold out at like 280 or 285, which now I'm looking at it. And I think it was like 165 the other day, which is nuts. So I think like I was paying attention to my portfolio, and again, as we talked before, my portfolio is very much about the future stocks. You're talking about what the younger generations are going to be getting into. And I noticed that it's not even like it's almost its own sector, because I noticed all of the stocks that I own that are like the future stocks I plan all got whacked. Had nothing to do with it, whether it was fintech, EVs, whatever sector it was in, didn't matter. All of them got hit hard. So part of me is wondering if there's almost like an unspoken sector that's out there. And there's these companies who are like, all right, we know that these are going to be good in the future, but we're going to suck the life out of them right now to put them into the value plays. And then they're going to start buying these in. I think the ones that are getting hit the hardest right now are going to be the ones that come out the strongest, as long as they survive. Some of them, obviously, if they're not profitable yet, have that danger of not surviving at all. But I think the ones that do come out are going to do the best. And I'll ask you, what do you think? Do the recovery that we come out of from this? Do you think it's going to be like a sharp V-shaped recovery, or do you think it's going to be a slow growth?
Just overall, like crypto and stocks.
Yeah, yeah, everything. So like once we get past the inflation, once we get past Russia, Ukraine, and we actually start to do a nice upward climb again, how quickly do you think
Yeah,
we're going to come out?
that's a good question. I think that I don't think it's going to be as drastic as the COVID recovery. You know, like that V-shaped recovery was purely because the government stepped in, propped up the entire stock market. Otherwise, we could very well still be in a bear market, probably.
Yeah, when
I
the
don't.
government makes it rain free money, it's
Yeah, yeah, giving everyone $3,000 to go throw into Dogecoin or whatever. But
yes.
but I think that this one is going to be a little more drawn out, and especially at least until these rate hikes are as the rate hikes continue, we know as those go up, the stock market will literally decline because people are moving to bonds and savings, whatever. Um, so I would say at least until like that's set in stone. But then even when it's finished, I mean, what have they said now? I haven't been following like what's the highest they're gonna go. Do they even know with interest rates?
No, so last I heard, the highest number is gonna be 13 different rate hikes over the next year and a half.
So if,
So
yeah, if they're each
I,
figure
I, I
like
yeah, I think 3 to 3.5% was going to be the highest they wanted to go, but obviously they have to play it by whatever inflation looks like. Because if
yeah,
inflation is not coming down, or if it comes down on its own, then that's a totally different ball game.
yeah,
So it's really going to be like a week to week, month to month following of seeing what's going on.
yeah, and so I feel like as long as that continues, again, market uncertainty, we're looking at like probably at least I think 2022 as a whole this year. I mean, I know personally, like that's my goal for this year is to focus more on, I'm definitely still adding to Tesla, but other than that, probably just going for VYM, going for like more inflation proof and interest rate proof type stuff. Because I think 2022, the whole year is going to be rough for, any of these
Oh
more
yeah.
growth and speculative stocks, especially. And, the market probably is due for a cool off. I mean, granted, nobody knows for sure, but, it's gone up so much the last few years. And again, the fact that it's gone up so much in large part to the money printing going on at the Fed. Um, I could see like a flatter year this year, give it some time to cool off. Wouldn't be surprised. And like I said,
Yeah.
yeah, much more drawn out recovery back to all time highs, maybe.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the recovery from this is going to be very similar to the housing market, the 2008 2009 crash and rebound, where the stocks like the Apples and Amazons who came out of that the strongest. We're going to end up seeing the same thing coming out of this. So like the Teslas, the Apples, Microsoft, those are going to come out of this relatively fast. They still won't be a V shape, but it'll come out faster. I think some of the growth plays might actually pop fast because they're so beaten down. But otherwise, I think because that's going to be like the clarity of, all right, now we can go risk on again and risk on, and they're going to
Yeah,
take off.
that's actually a really good point. I agree too.
Um, but otherwise, I do think it's going to take some time. There's going to still be a lot of uncertainty. I'm giving it probably 18 months before we even start to see any of that going on. Obviously, things can change. You never know. Maybe all of a sudden we hit September and inflation's like, "Hey, we're gone," and
Yeah,
we can magically change. But
yeah, it's funny you say that because that's at the same time like what I just said. Growth and these companies have just been so beat up. I mean, for them to go much lower would be criminal. So that's why I would also say not that growth and the more speculative stuff. I think this is probably close to the bottom. Like I just can't imagine like what would be lower. They'd be bankrupt. We're going to be
oh, I
trading
know.
penny stocks here. So maybe this is the bottom and it is just a flatter year or like a gradually coming back. Like I look at a Palantir. Palantir's at like what? It goes under $10 now, which
Oh yeah.
never thought we'd be there. I can't imagine it getting that much lower. I mean, that's literally the IPO price, and they're a stronger company. Again, all these companies doing better every year. They're getting, Palantir's one with great balance sheet. The growth is off the charts. And every time they report, another 30, 40% growth year, the stock goes down another 30 or 4%. It's like, how long can that continue for? I don't know. It's an
Oh, you
irrational
mean
market.
you mean it's like when Tesla opens up a new factory and the stock drops? Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it's funny because like I know some of my spec stocks, like I've got Beachbody and BNGO, and both of those, I've been dollar cost averaging down, but I had Beachbody at like $11 or $12 before they merged, and so that's now down to $2. BNGO down to $2, but they've been sitting at that level for like 4 months now, and they really haven't gone. Like sometimes they dip down a little bit further when the entire macro environment really pulls back, but other than that, they really have been kind of sitting steady down there. So I mean, like I said, I don't really think unless there's something really catastrophic that happens, I can't foresee them going any lower. But again, they're still not stocks that I think are going to recover anytime soon. So I'm not going to be dumping any more money into them.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
think that they're going to recover coming out of it, I'll throw a couple of bucks into them just to try and bring my dollar cost average down some more. But otherwise, I mean, I think we've got plenty of time on the high growth stocks that have been destroyed that aren't profitable yet.
Definitely, and I would agree. And you could also make the argument that again, the printing economy, a lot of these stocks probably did get to higher valuations than they should have been. Like Palantir should have been a $45 stock, probably not. And that's like that was the bubble. So when we see them get back to those all-time highs, if ever, I don't know. It's definitely going to take a while, I think, for stocks like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And like, and it's tough because like you look at, like I said, the valuations were so stretched. Tesla was high, but Tesla was kind of like a different beast all on its own. But you look at the stocks that aren't profitable yet; they basically have an infinite PE, so you can't really go by that. So those there could just run forever, and that's why they were so high, and that's why SPACs were so hot over the last year and a half, was because hey, here's free money, just go have at it, and this thing could be worth whatever you want it to be worth because there's nothing attached to it.
Yeah,
And then
no,
also when something is attached to it and then they take the money away, it's gone.
it's definitely true. And like you look at a Rivian who's got a billion market cap for every one truck they've sold. Um, and I just looked it up. Tesla's PE right now is 170, which in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I see no reason they don't continue to grow at least 50% a year,
Oh
for the
yeah.
next 5-10 years, maybe more, depending on if this Germany factory ever actually gets approved fully. But yeah, so if they keep growing 50%, that PE ratio is just going to keep getting cut down. So
Oh
now
yeah.
maybe a year from now, Tesla at an 80 PE ratio. I mean, that's where Amazon was for a long time, and at some point, I think that yeah, the valuation, then people can't say it's overvalued anymore, and or at least there'll be better valuation. There's still going to be people in 2030 when Tesla's the biggest company in the world saying it's overvalued, it's a fraud, blah blah blah, Gordon Johnson, etc.
Oh
but
yeah. And I look at for Tesla, I'm looking at my projections for the end of the year, 1479 EPS. So that puts Tesla right now at like a 65 PE, which I mean, even if you're
sorry.
gonna even if you're gonna be looking at the Amazons and the Apples. Apple, I noticed in your video, you're saying they're at the top of their S curve. They're still growing, but they're at the top end, and their PE is like a 35 to 40. So Tesla's at the low end. So even if you put Tesla, and when they were down to 700, that was like a 45 PE based on my numbers at the end of the year. Like every quarter, Tesla's going to be just their numbers are going to be so much larger that their PE ratio is going to come down so fast, and
Right.
eventually the stock's going to have to catch up to it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A company like Apple obviously is a one of a kind, but I feel like you know the last decade, let's say, at what point can they continue to be top dog without actually coming up with anything new? And it's like you could say right now the two, obviously Apple, the core business, it'll do fine. I'm not saying they're going bankrupt, but it's mature. It's they're not going to grow 50% a year. Um, they'll still be the biggest company in the world for a while, but barring some major innovation, and I feel like the two areas of innovation that they have potentially, the secretive Apple Car, if that's ever going to be a real thing or not, and the secretive metaverse Apple glasses. But at the same time, granted it is Apple, they have like a cult, unique following, um, and they probably could do a lot, with the iPhone and the App Store, keeping you in their ecosystem. But how long can they continue to really thrive and be at the top by just kind of copying others, so they're not going to be the first one to make an EV, they're not going to be the first one in the metaverse, they're going to be competing with all these other companies. I feel like that's not a recipe that keeps you at the top for long.
Yeah, and like I obviously the comparison between Apple and Tesla happens all the time. Tesla's got the cult following. They've got the innovative EV, like the Apple had the iPhone. So that's just like if you want to see what the future is going to look like with Tesla, take a look at where Apple was over the last 10 years. And as you said, Apple's not the same innovative company as they were before, whereas they're just really kind of slightly improving their product every year. But people obviously still keep buying it, and competition hasn't really affected them. They still own the majority of the market that's out there. So Tesla's going to be in the same boat in 10 years. And I have a friend who he works for Apple. So of course, every time I ask him a question, he goes, I cannot confirm nor deny. But obviously we know what's going on. So I know full well that they're working on, lots of big stuff for the metaverse, and they are definitely working on the car. And for Apple, they do have the autonomy division that they're working on. So Apple itself is not going to be producing the vehicle, but they are going to be producing the autonomy for it. And if there's a company that's out there that can do it, it would be Apple. And as my buddy told me, because he thought about working for Tesla himself, because he's over in San Francisco, and he said the difference between Apple and Tesla is like Tesla moves 3 times faster than Apple does. And it's like when you think about how fast Apple does move, it's crazy to think about the fact that Tesla's moving 3 times faster and innovating 3 times faster. So, that'll lead me to my next question is, over the next 10 years by 2030, what do you think the three top stocks are going to be over the next 10 years?
That's a good one. 2030, definitely Tesla number one, obviously. um, that's a tough one. Tesla is the clear winner I see, but after that, I mean, I could probably see Apple and Microsoft still being up there. Um, that would be like my conservative answer. I'd have to think more if like I could see maybe like a Nvidia or depending this metaverse stuff with like Facebook. At this point, seems like it's gonna make or break them. But I would say like Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, I could definitely see, or maybe Tesla, Nvidia, Facebook, or Meta. I mean, I would go with one of those two
What
trios.
What do you think the FANG stocks are going to be then? Do you think that we're still going to have all the FANG stocks there, or do you
Um,
think? 'Cause I know Kathy Wood talks a lot about genomics, and genomics are going to be the next FANG stocks.
yeah,
So
no,
I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 10 years or what's
genomics
going to
is
happen.
yeah, that's definitely an interesting one too. Genomics, obviously, I mean, that's an industry like I just don't know enough about. I've tried to like follow, but from my understanding, is like CRISPR is top, if
It's number
not,
one. Yeah.
and I still just I don't know. I feel like those are still far out. Like they say that in the 2000s it was too early. I feel like with the genomics, it might still be a little bit too early because yeah, I mean, are any of them profitable yet? I mean, they're all like binary outcomes at this point. I feel like still,
Yeah.
for the most part, it's like they are doing some incredible, life changing and possibly saving stuff. But at what point will it be mass marketed and actually making money on par with an Apple? That I feel like they'll definitely be doing incredible stuff the next few years. But as far as making the big bucks, I feel like we're still a little far out, maybe 10 years from now.
Yeah. And who
But
knows what Neuralink's going to do over the next 10 years? And
that's
Neuralink
true
just taking
too.
everything for.
But as far as FANG, um, this is something I've been wanting to like look more into Netflix because I feel like Netflix is another one that it's becoming a crowded space, but the fact that Netflix was the first mover, they pump all their money back into producing new content, shows and movies. And there's some great stuff I've watched on Netflix, as far as just TV shows and movies and documentaries and whatnot. I feel like right now there's a lot. People give a lot to, let's say, Peacock. They have the legacy shows. Let's call them the legacy shows of like The Office, Friends, stuff like that
Yeah.
that people love. So they're going to subscribe to them for that. But 10, 20 years down the line, are those still going to be the biggest shows, or is Netflix going to have the classics? And I just see as time goes on here, Netflix is just creating more and more, and they're going to have it forever. They reinvest it all back into creating more content. So over time, Netflix lead just becomes more and more. These other ones might exist. Like I think Disney Plus obviously is a good one too because they have a lot of unique stuff. But like it's almost like Netflix is the Tesla, and I don't see how anyone can catch them because they have the furthest lead. And obviously, Peacock Comcast budget is not Netflix's. They're going to be limited as to how much they can create, and so it's like they're reliant on all the old classics, but it's like it just seems very similar to Tesla to me. Like they can't catch up. It's a matter of following the money. If Netflix is reinvesting the most money and they have a 10-year lead already, barring a major setback, like I don't really see how anyone can catch them. So I feel like Netflix is a slept on. It's been getting beaten up lately. I know it dropped like 20%. That's when I was like tempted to look into it, but I was like, I have to just stick with index funds for now. I want to trim the portfolio, not branch out even more. But it's
Oh
definitely
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And Disney Plus obviously is a huge one because Disney has such great content. My thoughts about Netflix is I think with the metaverse coming out, the real big winners in that space are going to be the ones who utilize the metaverse for that because I'm envisioning you're going into the metaverse and you're going to go into a movie theater with a whole bunch of other people to watch something in the metaverse. You know, like you and I, we could be in the metaverse doing this, or we could, hey, I've got friends on the other side of the country. Let's go watch a movie together, and you can do it in the metaverse. So I think whatever companies adopt that going into this are going to be the ones that come out. So if Netflix does it, they're golden. If not,
Yeah,
I think they fail. So I
that's
think over the
yeah.
next 10 years, that's what's going to be. And a lot of people are, and I think Elon even said something, about the metaverse is, he doesn't know if that's actually going to make it, but there's so many people who
Not a
are,
fan. I think just because it's his feud with Mark Zuckerberg, he can't accept it.
well, and I think a lot of it is, while Elon does love, sci-fi and ingenuity and technology, taking away from reality is not something he wants to do. Because you're now getting into a place where you're not even in reality anymore.
Mhm.
You're in this whole metaverse. People are going to get sucked into it and never actually step outdoors
Yeah,
anymore.
we're gonna be
So
like,
I think that's one of the reasons he's against it. But I know we're going there. My buddy, he works for a tire company, and he does tech for them, and he's been building their metaverse platform for the last year and a half. So companies are gearing up for it, just like they're going to have cryptocurrency. So all these companies are building platforms for things to be built on. That's why I'm investing in the companies I do, because all the major companies are out there right now, and they're investing in the foundation and the structures for all of this. So it's
yeah,
coming.
that's definitely a great point with Disney. This is something I've been thinking about too because I own Disney as well. And yeah, there's the metaverse for them is like the amount of things they could do is just like limitless between Marvel and Star Wars. I mean, that'll be huge for them. I feel like I don't know. It'd be interesting though because I can put my Oculus on and I can watch Netflix. So maybe they survive via that. Like they don't necessarily do anything with the metaverse, but they're available. Like you can download Netflix off the App Store. Well, now you can watch Netflix in a universe with your friends, like you said, or in a movie theater. So we talked top cryptos. What's your top metaverse play?
I mean, it's tough because, like, while I do not like Facebook as a company because I do not like that they don't allow actual true free speech, if this thing does come to fruition and work, I think they're going to do quite well. So I think they're going to do well. Google is going to be fine coming out of it because the ad revenue they're going to get from all of it's going to be phenomenal. And then I look at Disney. So I do own some Disney, and think about, you put on your glasses, you sit down, and now you're going to pay $50 and you can go take a tour of Disney World with your glasses on in the metaverse, because
Mm,
Disney's going to have it set up like that. And you'll be able to go through the whole entire park from your home.
yeah,
And the things that they're going to be able to do with the metaverse are going to be huge. And so I think Disney's going to be a strong player coming out of this as long as they take advantage of the metaverse like that. So I see Disney doing well. Unfortunately, Facebook is going to do well. Um, I don't know what other companies, because I don't think Tesla is going to take advantage of the metaverse much, except for maybe the shopping experience. Maybe when you're going to go buy your car, they'll have the metaverse. That'd be it.
yeah. I think maybe once Elon has established the Mars colony, he'll like give it some more thought. But until then, he's like, I can't be bothered with this nonsense. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, no, that's
Well, and
that's a
think
good.
about it, because that might end up being like the Tesla's dealership. You go online to buy the
That's
car right now,
true. Yeah,
whatever it is, that might be their dealership.
yeah,
And that might be the only saving grace for a lot of the legacy automakers, is to
that's a good
utilize the
point. Yeah,
metaverse as their dealerships, because their dealerships as we know it are going to be gone, because their
we
dealerships right now are just a showroom and a place where they're going to do service on your vehicle. But
we're
if you don't
never
need
gonna
service
leave
on
our
your vehicle
houses.
anymore, I mean, Tesla's got service centers too, because obviously they're needed. So you're going to still need legacy automotive, service centers, but you're just not going to see them the way that we know them as they are today.
Yeah, it's just made me think of something else now. I definitely read this in like, I don't know if it's like Intelligent Investor or One Up on Wall Street, maybe by Peter Lynch. But no, you know what? No, it was in Zero to One. Have you read that book by
No.
Peter Thiel? So Zero to One, highly recommend it. And it's great. He basically describes like a company going to zero to one is Tesla, Google, Apple, um, basically escaping competition. And I'm just thinking now, he gives these examples of like companies that failed because they were too busy competing for something that's in the past versus creating something new. So I was just thinking, well, we're talking about metaverse and Google's definitely going to get involved, Apple, Microsoft. So now you're going to have all the FAANG stocks and Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Apple definitely competing in the metaverse. What if the metaverse is like a done thing, and while they're all competing, this could potentially be their downfall or how someone surpasses them, who thinks of the next thing? Because like this is something obviously the four of them competing, they're going to have to throw tons of money at, try and undercut. They're not going to be able to have a monopoly, kind of like Apple and Google, where they aren't competing with anyone. By competing with each other, and you could also tie this back to the legacy autos and how Tesla was able to come out of nowhere seemingly, to do something new, that like everyone's competing for like the shiny object that's right in front of them, but not thinking 10 years down the line. So that's where I could see, going back to those top three companies, a Nvidia or someone comes in and tops FAMGA stocks or FANG.
Yeah, and I think about it, and that's like when Tesla, when their Q4 earnings call and Elon's talking about FSD, robo taxis, and the Tesla bot, and everybody's like, "Ah, boo, we don't want that. We want what's going on now." But like that's where Elon's mind is 10 years down the road. He's like, "Well, we already figured out. We already have the new thing. We created the new thing, and now everybody else is trying to compete with us in the new thing. So they're now in the process of creating the next new thing, which nobody else is even going to start working on yet because they're still trying to compete with Tesla's last new thing." And so looking at that, and then I look at the metaverse and you say, when we start seeing the metaverse become reality, take a look at what companies, and there's going to be a company that probably doesn't even exist right now, that is all of a sudden going to take a hold of the metaverse and just become the hot new thing and take off. And so that's going to be something to pay attention to. Maybe we get a metaverse bubble like we had the .com bubble. Maybe there's a whole lot of companies, this hot new thing, everybody's going into the metaverse. Who's going to survive? We may end up running into that type of situation in the middle of the decade too.
Yeah, definitely. That's true. It's crazy to think about. I mean, so metaverse winner, like who would you pick? Did you have one for currently, or did you say
Oh, good.
Facebook?
Good God. Facebook, and it's funny because I don't know how Facebook, I think Facebook is actually going to utilize the metaverse as a social gathering place. They're going to utilize it as,
The next
hey,
step of social media making, or just socializing, is going to be
right,
all in the
yeah.
metaverse.
So
Yeah.
so instead of being on your phone, you're actually going to be in a social setting. Like maybe you'll go to the bar, maybe you'll
Hmm.
go to a casino with your friends from all over the country and all over the world, and you'll actually be able to do it in a centralized place. So I
Yeah.
think if Facebook can pull that off, I think they will end up being the big winner.
Yeah, and like I said, I have the Oculus, and they're kind of already doing stuff like that, which is awesome. And right now, they're the clear winner. It'll depend in the next few years what competition we get. I'm sure it's coming, but if Facebook can or Meta can establish a big enough lead, that could be a big winner too. I think we got
Yeah,
to set
I
up.
just wish it was a different company who was doing it, but
Yeah, I
but
think
I,
we
I
got
think
to.
it's going to be tough because I think it's going to be really good for a lot of situations and a lot of companies, but it could also be something that could suck the life out of humanity as we know it.
Yeah, it'll be like that movie. What was it, like Surrogates with Bruce Willis, or like The Matrix? Obviously, we're just living in this fake
Oh yeah,
fantasy
or I think it was
simulation.
like Wally, where we actually,
Yeah, or that well,
we,
that we're
we don't
already
even,
there basically.
yeah, we don't even have to move.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think we need to look
Oh
into
yeah,
setting up our own uh, thematic investment fund here, where we just do like a survey of maybe high school and college kids every year. Ask, what devices do you spend the most money on these days, and invest
yeah,
purely accordingly to that. I think we're onto something.
yeah. Seriously, I'm contemplating coming up with what would be in my Gen Z ETF.
That's definitely, and again, it comes back to, like you said earlier, Tesla's already got the lead, and moving forward, the only people who want to buy GM and Chevrolet and whatnot are older for the most part. Obviously there's some exceptions,
Yeah,
some people who like hate the planet or something, I guess. But other than that, what
or
do
they're
the
from
younger?
Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's for real. Oh my God. Or and like you said, what do all the young kids want? They don't want Corvettes and Lamborghinis. They want a Tesla.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, and it's only going to help them long term.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. Where can
Yes,
people
sir.
find you?
You guys can find me on my YouTube channel, Oracle Investments, or I'm on Twitter at Oracle Tim1.
Awesome. And I'll link to those below again. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ben.